Hey everybody, Happy New Year. We're the good doctors of Abbey Research. Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Netflix's show, The Crown. I'm Dr. Erin.
I'm Dr. Kristen.
And we're up to episode 8.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting to the end of the season. This one is titled 48:1, which makes sense about 5 minutes in, but it's still a really weird episode title. But as Dr. Kristen just said offline, we can't call it like We Hate Margaret Thatcher. So
or Margaret Thatcher's a racist.
Margaret Thatcher's a racist doesn't quite roll off the tongue. Neither does 48:1, but that's neither here nor there. So the guts of this episode is a clash between Queen Elizabeth and Margaret Thatcher over how the Commonwealth and how the UK is and is not dealing with the continuing aggression of the apartheid government in South Africa. And this all centers around a meeting of the Commonwealth of Nations in Nassau, the Bahamas.
Nassau,
the Bahamas. And the negotiations of the 48 Commonwealth nations to try and impose sanctions on the apartheid government, and the one holdout being the UK, which is where we get the episode title from. So we go back and forth with these women throughout the episode. The Queen actually makes a covert statement against the PM through her press secretary into the Sunday Times, which is the first time that had ever happened. The palace to this day, as we learn at the end of the episode, denies that it has ever happened, but because this becomes such a clusterfuck, we understand why they are just going to go down the road of denial. And so it's a really heavy Gillian Anderson, Olivia Colman episode, which is great. We get it through the lens of this guy, Michael Shea, who's the press secretary. I don't understand why we need this like everyday person perspective on characters we've spent building for 4 seasons, or Margaret Thatcher, who's not that difficult to understand. But there were some confusing parts for me with Michael Shea until we figured out who he was, and then why do I still care what he thinks? And but he ends up being the fall guy as the person who released a statement on behalf of the Queen, or not on behalf of the Queen. And we also get some, not surprising insights into Prince Andrew and his ego and various complexes in relationship with his mother and siblings on the eve of his wedding to Fergie, whom we do not get to meet, but we get to see, because why would we give a speaking role to a woman when we can spend 25 minutes on Michael Shea? So the end of the episode is, really about this clash between the Queen and the Prime Minister. They have a very tense meeting back in Buckingham Palace after the Sunday Times story that doesn't go well for the Queen. And then, Michael gets sacrificed as the sacrificial lamb for the story, and Andrew gets married, and the royal family moves on. And eventually apartheid ended, which, is a strange afterthought to an episode sort of about South Africa. But that's the guts of 48:1. We just have a couple of thoughts about a couple of humans on the show. It's not going to be a terribly in-depth recap, but we did find it an interesting episode, and we did appreciate the discussion of South Africa and the inclusion in this narrative of the 1980s. Dr. Kristen, what would you like to talk about?
Every time I think I can't quite disagree with Margaret Thatcher more strongly than I already do.
Yeah.
Every single time I think I couldn't have disliked her as a human being more. We learn more things.
Yeah, we should say, and I think we've said this in previous videos, but it's worth repeating, that we were still living in the United Kingdom when Margaret Thatcher died. And as you can imagine from our side coverage on Northern Ireland, there were a lot of different reactions to her death.
People felt a lot of things with their whole bodies.
Around parts of Belfast where we were living. And we just said this offline, the more I understand about who she was as a prime minister and as a person, the more I understand the people dancing in the street across Northern Ireland and other parts of Great Britain.
Yeah, Glasgow was like an entire street festival, I think.
Yeah. Glasgow definitely had a parade, and I understand why.
I don't have a lot of time for anyone who refuses to compromise at all. It's not something that it's not a trait in any human being that I value.
No.
I don't have a lot of time for one person holding up political arrangements like this, especially when it's possible that she was wrong. First of all, like, we know that sanctions do work because the only thing the apartheid government cared about was money and Western power. It was, it boggles the mind. And especially I realized that I've done quite a bit of study on South Africa. And so I knew that Mark Thatcher had business interests there. And so the whole time that this was going, I knew that that's why she never really agreed to sanctions, personally as a human being. But it was one of those, like, I hadn't consciously thought about it in a really long time.
Yeah.
And so, like, as she was sitting there spouting off the most trickle-downy economics explanation of why sanctions don't work, I was like, oh yeah, Mark had a company in Pretoria. So sanctions are pretty much the only thing that work against totalitarian regimes. It's all we got.
We use them all the time.
We use them all the time. I think America has like 6 countries we've got sanctions against.
I was about to say, I know Iran is one of them.
I mean, at one point Russia was, like, it's, we do this a lot. Because as much as we may hate it, money is actually how the world works. So anyway, I have really strong feelings about anyone who was pro the apartheid government, and that are personal. And you can probably extrapolate them for yourself. But I will say, in terms of the performances,
yeah, that's fair.
2 quick things. They did the wig better on Maggie this time.
Much better. The angle of her tilt was much. Of
her tilt felt a little better. And I would like more things in which Olivia Colman gets to quietly roll with anger, because this was like peak season 2 Broadchurch face we got.
Yeah, we got a lot of Broadchurch face happening.
And I mean, I love charming Olivia. I love, like, who she was in The Favorite that she won the Oscar for. I love her in Peep Show. But there's something really righteous to me about how she embodies anger, and how we don't often allow women to be angry in art or in life. And she, I don't know, it just really gets to me how she does it. She really seems to kind of articulate what through her face without a single word. Yeah. What her face does is how I feel often about the moment. And I really appreciate that. So I was really happy about that.
And I think, right, like, she's the stand-in for us in this episode way more than the Queen normally is.
Yes.
And, like, most normal, I shouldn't say normal, most compassionate humans were looking at Margaret Thatcher in this episode going, how are you saying these things? How are you making these references and talking about sovereign nations in Africa in this way, with this level of uncaring and disrespect? And so I think that's why her anger is so effective when she wields it like she did in this episode, because, like, she was us in those rooms with Thatcher being like, I'm sorry, you said what now?
Yeah, and there was just so much innate, I think, for me, disrespect to a fellow human being that was in front of you. I don't know. It's just, there was almost part of me in that last meeting that I didn't want Thatcher to curtsy, because I was like, nothing about your life is respectful. Nothing about these decisions that you made shows deference to your sovereign. Like, it's the most hypocritical thing you've done. Get up off your knee.
Interrupted her.
3
times.
We don't do this.
No.
So, yeah, I mean,
yeah.
we both do seek really, really hard to do the condoning, not understanding. I mean, understanding is not condoning thing, and to try to like really, Margaret Thatcher presses the boundaries of that for me. I can't lie. And she probably always will, because everything she says is just so, I don't actually know how she got there in her brain. I don't know how she had her upbringing and just, anyway.
Yeah.
So the more, Andrew is stressful to me whenever he's on screen.
For lots of reasons.
For lots of reasons. No less so in this episode. But what I was actually really confused about is why we had, like, why what Charles said was so shocking and rude. Like, Andrew is a fringe royal.
Yeah, and like I know he said it in a tone of voice that was like dismissive, and Charles got his own baggage. They were clearly all upset that their whole lives they've been told they're never allowed to have public opinions, and then their mother clearly found she had a line in the sand and shared a public opinion. So I understand why they were all snippy. So I think that really guided Charles, and there was a really like weird gleeful moment where he was like relishing how badly she had botched it, where I was like, oh, that's a side of Charles I didn't like to see. But like, why did Andrew think like his marriage was gonna trump the Queen saying something about the Prime Minister? And like, nobody cares. No, you are literally fourth in line. And then, you know, whatever kids William has and whatever kids William's kids have, like, no, buddy, you're not even the spare. You're like way down the line. Get over it.
It's just, I mean, like, and we've
second sons, man.
Second son. Only second son I currently have time for is Benedict Bridgerton. So, correct.
Number 2.
Andrew is just a complicated entity because of a lot of accusations against him and some of his behaviors in online interviews. And I understand why they need to show him. They do. He's a part of the 80s. His marriage to Fergie is a major part of the 80s. Fergie becomes an entity and all that kind of stuff. But I can't, just as a person, as a human being, I do not want to spend time with him.
Nope.
So every time we do, I'm like, I'm just reminded of all the reasons I don't want to spend time with him.
Yeah.
And it makes me uncomfortable to see him and the Queen so close. And I'm just a little bit like, oh, sometimes mothers really are blinded by their sons. And it just all makes me go in my soul, and I don't love it.
And like,
the scene of, I will say though, just really quickly, the scene of Margaret like sitting up in bed to read the article was, I loved the montage of the whole royal family reading the article.
That was yeah. It like ripples through the family. Yeah, I appreciated that. That was really good. And I thought, you know, it was a beautifully shot episode as well. And I think really well told and well paced. So there were aspects of it. And I appreciated, I should say, because we were talking offline that like, and I said I didn't feel like I learned a whole lot from this episode that I couldn't extrapolate myself or I didn't already know. But I did appreciate the perspective they gave us on how the Queen feels about the Commonwealth.
Correct.
And how she sees that as her life's work, her families, her 2 families, her personal family and her Commonwealth family are like the guiding forces of her life. So I really appreciated that. And I, for that reason, appreciated this episode, because they had to find a way into it. And talking about sanctions in the apartheid government in South Africa, I thought was a great entry point. So it was one of those where like, while I was watching it, I was like, what are we doing? What am I learning? And then talking about it afterwards, I was like, you know, I didn't love the episode, but I do see the point of it. And I feel like it fits a lot better in this season than some of the other episodes we've gotten.
Correct. If we had not spent any time with Michael Shea and had in fact spent more time with Elizabeth in some way unpacking that, I loved the flashback to Claire Foy. Loved that. That speech, if that speech had not been full of the benevolent racism of the crown, I would have loved that speech. There's some lovely sentiments in it. But It's just hard. Britain's hard.
Britain's a hard sit, man.
Britain's a hard sit. Like I joke all the time when I teach internet. I've said this to Dr. Erin, but viewers, whenever I teach international relations on any level, the joke I always make is everything was fine and then the British showed up, and it's not often wrong.
No.
And wrong. Everything in Malawi was doing 2 thumbs way up, and then the British showed up. So it's
British showed up, and I mean, add that.
The Belgians, Rwanda was great until the Belgians and until the Germans showed up, and then
any colonizing force really can fit in for that.
So it's just a hard sit. It's a hard sit, but like the nice thing about nice is wrong. The thing about this episode that is fascinating and that has always been fascinating about Claire's interaction with the Commonwealth and now Olivia's interaction with the Commonwealth as the Queen has been the way that they understand their role in that. Mm-hmm. And the way they play that. And so I appreciated going back and seeing that. I was glad we didn't have to see Matt Smith because his Philip still makes me grumpy. But yeah, the best at this point, the Crown has broken my heart so many times and frustrated me so many times that every time I end an episode and don't go,
yeah,
great episode. So on that front, great episode.
Yeah. And, I don't think we've got really enough to say about Northern Ireland.
In 85, not really. No.
85. There's always stuff happening in Northern Ireland. The Anglo-Irish Agreement in 85 was a pretty big deal in terms of the relationship between the Conservative government and unionist politicians in Northern Ireland. But does it warrant its own mention in these episodes? Probably not. And I'm glad we spent time at least recognizing the cataclysmic.
The 80s was much more about apartheid than it was about
much more about apartheid. Yeah, especially
once we get past the hunger strikes.
Yeah, Northern Ireland settles down in inverted commas, and the international attention certainly was focused on South Africa. So I appreciated it. Yeah, I think it's one of those that like. It fits more with the narrative of the show. Individually, it's not the strongest episode, but like collectively, it fits a lot better than some of the other episodes we've had this season. So on par with that, and like, are any of us surprised that Peter Morgan made us view an entire episode about the Queen and Margaret Thatcher through the lens of another random white dude? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
I would expect nothing less.
On that note, we got 2 episodes left. And I'm going to assume we're spending time with Diana.
I was about to say, we again get a whole episode without Diana and like 2 lines from Charles. So we're going back to that train, I guarantee.
Again, there's a lot. We ended 91, I think, with their divorce. So we've got some road to hoe here. And we will be your faithful guides through the next 2 episodes before we head to another series, while I'm assuming the 5th of this one is getting written. So
yeah, if we're getting 6
times are going to screw everything up. So
yeah, COVID times are going to mess with everything. Yeah. We're getting 6 seasons, I think. Yes,
6 seasons, but shorter seasons each one, I believe. And the only casting that we have is Imelda Staunton.
We have Prince Philip as well. It's Jonathan
Price. Yes, the Lexus guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say your man from the Popes.
Your man from the Pope, but also the Lexus guy.
Yes, the Lexus guy. Yeah, so I think that's it in terms of casting. So we're gonna be a while before season 5, but we'll see you for the next few episodes of this, and then we have decided we'll announce it now. After The Crown, we're going to cover Netflix's latest smash success, Bridgerton, because it is a smash success. It's a fantastic show. We have a lot to talk about, and we love romance novels. So
I think I first read that book 20 years ago.
This was my foray into romance novels, was the gift of The Duke and I from Dr. Kristen, which is the book that the first season is based off of. And it has been a whirlwind romance with myself and romance.
Very true. Very true. I was so scared to give it to her too, because I was like, Erin's really serious and she likes like really important books. And I'm like, here's Happily Ever Afters and a corset. And
which we should have known because we both are obsessed with the movie Ever After.
I know. I don't know why I was so scared. I think I'm just always, and we'll talk about when we talk about Bridgerton, but romance is so maligned as an industry.
It is.
That
and
I'm always
like,
nervous
I super
these books.
Yeah, I was super judgmental of it, like probably in my 20s, and then I didn't really think about it as much. But reader, I will tell you, it's pretty much all I read for the end of 2020 because stories you can control, guaranteed happy endings,
bounded to joy.
All the serious sad books behind me, not been opened.
No, we'll talk about it a lot. We'll talk about the differences in the books. We've both read the books. We've both liked the show as a separate entity, and we both love the books as a separate entity. We will make sure we are clear when we are spoiling books and when things are going on. So hopefully we are a good place to start your Bridgerton conversation, because I know Netflix doesn't release ratings, but we're getting a season 2.
I mean,
we're getting a season 3. So we'll be doing this for a little while.
Around the whole world.
We cannot be happier. So 2 more episodes of Modern Royalty, and then we're going to head back to Queen Charlotte.
Back in time.
And then we'll see where we go from there. But no matter what, you can trust us to be honest with what we see, and we hope we can continue to trust you guys to comment and interact and tell us what you think about what we see, because that's our favorite part of this whole thing. So in the meantime, I'm Dr. Kristen.
I'm Dr. Erin.
We're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye, guys.